Hi, I'm Daniel Attias. I directed Silver Bullet 17 years ago, and I'm looking forward to watching it with you. Well, as I hear Jay Chataway's score, I'm reminded of what a lovely job he did. He really gave the picture a kind of a positioned it as kind of a child's tale, fanciful, a little bit, almost a fairy tale quality, which I think he was working for in the score, and I think he delivered quite effectively. The moon, of course, is a part of every werewolf movie. This one was a little unusual. We had a script challenge to deal with in that the werewolf appears throughout the picture, not just at the full moon, which is attempted to be addressed in the script. I don't know how effectively. We kind of laughed about the departures from the strict convention, but it seemed to be required. The first appearance of the wolf is, of course, at the full moon, which we're setting here, convention for movies. The narration is an interesting question that we had to address, whether we really needed it. But it was felt that it did, since so much of the picture was, at least it was my feeling, and I think Stephen King's as well, that it was really so much about the relationship between the brother and sister that having the narration be spoken by the adult Janie gave it, again, removed it a little bit from everyday reality and made it something that was a little more fairy tale-ish. This is Jim Gammons, a very, very wonderful actor whom I had seen in some Sam Shepard plays at the time. He's gone on to have, he had a good career before this, and fortunately was not ruined by this, although he did tell me in later years that he wanted very much to keep the mold of his head, which is not, I guess anybody who's listening to this doesn't need to be preserved from knowing what happened, since presumably they've seen it. Martha Shoemaker was, at the time, a fairly new producer. She's Dino's wife. She did a wonderful job. I think this was her second or third exclusive producing credit. Here was a challenge throughout the film. We really did not have a very good werewolf. It just looked like very, as we were trying to develop it, we actually started production without having the werewolf. Carlo Rambaldi, who made E.T., was given the job of designing it, and I don't know if it was budgetary considerations or what, but we really couldn't see too much of it because it was described as various things, as a guy in a dog suit to a bear suit. So throughout the picture, we really tried to make it a point to see as little as we could and leave the rest to the imagination, which is generally more effective anyway. That's the famous head of Jim Gammons, which he, I think, was able to keep. Now here's this boy who is shown as a visual segue. We had a squashing bug. Instead of being able to show the head, of course, being squashed, this was something that we felt would be a kind of a nice visual segue, and it also did something else, which is, this is a pretty moralistic little tale, and that all of the victims really are. There's an attempt, anyway, to show that if they didn't quite deserve it, they weren't exactly great characters. And this friend of Marty's is shown as at the beginning as kind of liking violent little acts. He's also, you're going to see, he's going to have a lot of fun with Janie. Film was shot in Wilmington, North Carolina. This is not in Wilmington. I forget the name of this town, but it's nearby Wilmington. And one of the anomalies in the script was that it was written, Stephen King is a New Englander, and he wrote actually this was based on a calendar, not even a book. I think it may be described as a novelette, but it was a series of stories on each month of the year where this werewolf strikes. And it was set in New England, but where Dino De Laurentiis' studio was was in the South, in North Carolina. So there are a few funny anomalies. Primarily the names always strike me as kind of humorous. They're not exactly your typical Southern names that the characters have. Marty here, we're trying to, we're trying to, Corey Haim was a very sympathetic, appealing kid, and trying to, an important theme of the picture, the one that interested me most, concerned disability. And so here we're preserving awareness that he is in a wheelchair until a later moment. Here is the moment. And the attempt was to present Marty as a typical clean-cut, fun, kind of kid. And then you see that he's got this disability. But a key theme in the picture, if this kind of genre can bear themes like this, I think they can. I think it's what elevates some of them above others if they're treated well. I was trying to look at characters who have a disability and various characters' response to that. And so Marty is a healing kid because, except for a few instances, you're not aware that he is aware of his disability, that he thinks of it as a disability, that he's a kid who feels empowered despite the fact that he's in a wheelchair. Certainly Janie here, we see her central issue. She doesn't feel very empowered by the fact that he's in a wheelchair. She feels quite the contrary, that her life is defined by having a brother who needs a lot of care and gets a lot of attention that she does not get. Here's a bit of a cheat in storytelling, in that it really is not important that Janie sees this introduction of the character Stella. It was just a segue to tell that story, but nothing is done with the fact that she has knowledge of Stella's problems. Here the attempt, of course, is in the storytelling is to really, I hope it wasn't hammering it too hard, but to hammer home the family dynamic, that you have a kind of over-solicitous mother who feels overprotective of her son, understandably, and a daughter who's feeling she gets short shrift because of it. I like very much the relationship Megan Follows, who played Janie, had with Marty, played by Corey Haim. We really tried to get kids who felt real. I mean, there's so much in this story that's not real. I mean, a lot of it has to really be tongue-in-cheek. I mean, so many horrible things happen in this town, which doesn't seem to affect anybody from going about their normal course of affairs. But here it was pretty important to kind of try to have the feeling of real kids. And I really, really think that Megan Follows is just a superb actress and just did a great job here. We also really made an attempt, since it was about disability, I'll try to talk a little bit more about that as we go along, to show as much as possible what disabled life entails. So that, this is all in one shot of Marty having to of Janie having to get the wheelchair, having to put it out, having Marty have to make his way into it without use of his legs, and shortly we'll see how he has to propel himself up the ramp. I thought it was important to really give the audience a sense of what this kid's life is like, and then also show that he has no self-pity about it. The movie was shot beautifully, I think, by a wonderful cameraman, Armando Nanuzzi. It's kind of a funny story. This was my first job directing, and Dino De Laurentiis, who just this year, 2001, received an Academy Award, Special Academy Award from the Motion Picture Academy, and I was touched in his acceptance speech. He made a point to producers to take a chance on young directors, and that's what he did with me. And this was my first job, and it's now 17 years ago, and I've worked steadily ever since. And I'm very grateful to Dino for being willing to do that. One of the humorous aspects of it is that he gave me a cameraman who, it's my first job, he gave me a cameraman who spoke no English. And I spoke no Italian. So Armando Nanuzzi and I each spoke a little French, not too well. Armando's son, Danielle, was the operator. He spoke a little English, so communication was pretty amusing. When I was informed by Dino, being a first-time director, I wasn't exactly invited to hire my director of photography. When I was informed by Dino that it was his strong preference that we use Armando, I quickly looked up his credits and found that he had been the director of photography for Visconti on The Damned, I believe it was, and quickly understood if he was good enough for Visconti, he'd be good enough for me. Here's another in the scenes of, frankly, not very fully realized characters who get offed. One of the, I guess, obligatory conventions of the genre. The film, what always struck me as kind of schizoid about this is I was really interested in the family dynamics and trying to have fully realized characters within the family. And frankly, from the most part, the victims are essentially kind of two-dimensional characters talking in not terribly realistic dialogue. But, it's like it seemed that, of course, you have to establish the terror, and this was the choice of this movie. Here we have the monster again, who we can't really see, so we had a moving camera, steady cam approaching up the wall, seeing a hand, and just get a glimpse. Shadows are important, and you'll see very tight close-ups of eyes and things like that. This is also an example of, the victim in some perverse way sort of deserving it. She's trying to commit suicide. So there's some morality in this, if you can call it that. That's the biggest shot of the werewolf you've seen yet to date. This scene was reshot a couple of times because, for Dino's liking, he really wanted some gore. I'm not ashamed to admit it was excessive for my taste, but it was felt by Dino that it really required some gruesome shots, so that's what we got. And here the, classic convention of the overwrought, besieged local authority not being able to deal with the menace. This is Terry O'Quinn, a wonderful actor, playing the sheriff.
What did he say, Joe?
He said they'd be here by noon.
Maybe that wasn't such a good idea, telling that Smokey Bear from the detective division to fuck off, Joe.
Well, I waited till he hung up.
Nice touch from Stephen King. Stephen was so great to work with. I just want to say I haven't really kept in touch with him over the years, but he, here I was a first-time director, and he had written the script for Dino, and he was very, very open to, discussions with me and input. There was one scene in particular that I kind of worked out in an improv with Gary Busey and Robin Groves. We'll get to it shortly. That he said, "Oh, great, yeah, use it," and so he was, really, really very humble, unassuming man with whom I really enjoyed working. He wasn't on the set, but he was always available. That's Lawrence Tierney behind the bar, the bartender, an old-time actor who, this kind of goofy bat, the peacemaker, which plays a kind of important plot point throughout. Not the most, we had a wonderful prop and art department, but that wasn't one of our better realized props. Okay, here's Brady and this little girl. We shot in North Carolina, and we cast some in New York as a kind of interesting amalgam of characters. I'm not sure if we quite successfully mixed them all into one universe that was believable, but this is a girl who was from Wilmington, and the fellow who played the guy stirring up the trouble is an excellent actor, Bill Smitrovich, who's gone on to have a wonderful career. Here, Marty is talking about his uncle. Of course, they're looking at the site of the scene of the attack, and Marty is suitably concerned. But what I failed to mention is earlier, we've established Uncle Red as being Marty's hero, and Uncle Red could have been played by no one any better than Gary Busey, who was just really fun to work with. Gary had gotten an Academy Award nomination for Buddy Holly story and had been having some troubles and hadn't worked a great deal in the time immediately preceding Silver Bullet. I just was such a huge fan of his. I really fought for him to get this part, even though at the time there was a little bit of a reluctance in movie making to work with him because he was dealing with some personal challenges, which I'm glad to say I believe he's overcome. But he was just he's so creative. He's such a wonderful actor. This sequence is, I don't know what to say about it. It's pretty establishing the werewolf in this area. And for example, Jim Baffico, wonderful guy, former professional football player, very cultured, erudite guy you'd never believe watching this bigot here putting down cripples. But he had fun with it, and this was a very over-the-top kind of a sequence, but it was part of the project. Here we're trying to establish a couple of things about Marty. One, that he's not always conscious of his fuel consumption, because that'll be important later when he runs out of gas. Also, it's just so darn cute that he's going to the service station to get the gasoline.
Hey, Mr. Cox.
Well, Marty, I see you lucked out again.
Yep. Would you fill her up, please?
Want me to check the oil?
I really like a lot of the character actors we had in this.
Driver's bullshit level?
There's a guy sitting in the bar.
Okay, this is the introduction of Gary Busey, and this is the second half of this scene is the part that was improv'd by Gary and Robin and myself, in which Stephen King was willing to, put in the script under his name. And here we see Uncle Red, and it's important to establish basically he's kind of a lost soul himself. He's alcoholic. He's going through his third divorce, and and this boy worships him. And I think their connection is that they both are adventurous and kind of have an excitement for life, and they both have a disability. Marty's is obvious, but Gary Busey's, Uncle Red's disability has to do with his own self-conception and his self-destructiveness. Now, the mom here, having been being the mom of a disabled kid and being overprotective, is really concerned about the influence of her brother. And also it's an interesting dynamic that she and her brother don't really get along, just as Marty and Janie have troubles. So she's going to intervene here and send Marty up to bed because Uncle Red's been drinking and is now swearing.
Good night.
See you later. See you in the morning. I'll see you in the morning.
And the scene that follows, I just think is a wonderful scene because it really just is as all good scenes are. They come from opposing goods. It's not like good versus bad. Each point of view is strong and very defendable. Uncle Red doesn't want this boy treated as an invalid, and so he doesn't want him to be instructed to act like an invalid, whereas the mother doesn't want the boy to be shown examples of quitting on life, which is what she views Uncle Red to be doing. I love how it's based in the dynamic of the characters, their history together. You get a sense of, and
Don't be telling me what to do.
and I think it sets up also how the story should work, even though it's clearly tongue-in-cheek in a lot of ways about this werewolf and everything. But the story really works best when, I think, seen as a challenge of this kid Marty to kind of emerge intact into adulthood and to feel empowered.
So easy for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You blow in here once a month, and you tell a few jokes, and you have a few beers, and then you want to lecture me about how to raise my son. Well, I am the one who is responsible for how he feels when he sees you like this, and how he feels when you leave. Red, Marty has enough strikes against him as it is.
He doesn't have any strikes against him.
That I am scared to death that someday he is just going to give up.
He's not going to give up.
Well, he doesn't need you showing him how to do it.
I thought both of these actors just did such a wonderful job on this scene. All right, here we go to one of the obligatory murder scenes that's pretty goofy. As you can see, we're not going to great lengths to establish a sympathetic victim. And why anybody would have a greenhouse that looked like that in their backyard, I have no idea. But as long as it was there, it was there. No, we built it. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, rebel airplane. Oh, that's it. Oh, that hurts my parts.
What's interesting, instead of, in terms of the victims, another really interesting, this issue of disability is fascinating to me because also, of course, another primary disability in this picture belongs to the Reverend, who I'm assuming anybody who's listening to my commentary knows is the werewolf. He's got whatever animal nature or imperfections or whatever you might want to say the werewolfness is metaphor for. He's got these this form of a disability, and he can't accept it because he's a man of God, and he has expectations of perfection of himself. So he's got this dark side that he doesn't know how to let out. I mean, if we're going to get psychological here, he's really going crazy, obviously, in the course of the picture. And but it's interesting how his victims are kind of chosen as kind of a mixture of his human kind of moralistic side and his animal side. So he's picking characters like Stella, who's about to commit suicide, to kill. Or this kid Brady, who's not such a great kid, who's kind of mischievous. Now, what's going to follow is actually a contribution from Dino De Laurentiis, who felt very, very strongly that the way this scene would work best is if there were a point of view from beneath the floorboards. If we establish this monster below the floorboards, know where he is, and have him stalking his victim. So this was a set designed at the suggestion of Dino, and I thought it was an interesting choice. I thought it worked well. The breath, we're work to find ways to suggest the monster without having to see him, of course. The sound effects I thought were very, very effective in the show. The sound effects cutter who assembled them was, I'm feeling badly, I'm not going to pronounce his name correctly, Dan Lieberthal, I think it was his name. Anyway, here is our wonderful human being getting so unfairly treated.
Ain't that a hell of a note?
Isn't that something?
You kind of wonder in a town this small why anybody's hung around at this point, but fortunately the film didn't linger too much on that question.
Got any leads?
The mayor, of course, is pressuring the local authorities. And here is a montage sequence just showing the paranoia of the community. Some of these characters, like this woman here, will be revisited late in a later montage when Janie is trying to see who might be the werewolf, who might have a damaged eye. Here again, we take this opportunity to show Marty being a regular kid, climbing trees, not being, considering himself disabled because he can't walk.
Brady, I got it. Great. Marty, Claus, how you get out of that tree? Supper was ready an hour ago, Dumbo. forgot. She mad? Yeah, at me for not finding you sooner.
Megan, Janie gets another chance to show, how she really hates suffering this fool. What I like about her is the performance in particular, is she keeps true to the character, but she's also not. She obviously doesn't despise her brother, even though she is very angry at the situation. This is the first version of the Silver Bullet, the wheelchair. We've seen it earlier in the film. A low tech version of the real spiffy one that we're gonna see later, that was designed by Jeff Jarvis, a special effects fellow in Los Angeles while we were filming it in North Carolina, who built a beautiful piece of machinery. Here we're, unfortunately, I guess, telegraphing this kid's fate by the push-in and the leaving him alone and cutting to the kite.
We ought to make Joe Haller a dog catcher. Nothing big, just a little poodle. Andy, lighten up. Let Joe handle the investigation. Investigation? This whole investigation has been about as efficient as a submarine with screen doors.
Bill Smitrovich is using his considerable charms to persuade the town populace. Coming into the scene is going to be Brady's father, an actor named Kent Broadhurst, who's also a playwright and a very talented actor. I don't know if we think he belongs in this town. I mean, he's a New York actor, and as a lot of the people are, but I thought he was very powerful.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb.
Well, now, of course, the werewolf is struck deeper into the heart of the community, attacking a child. And this, I think, sets up Marty's vulnerability for later, as well as how terrible is this threat. Here's Kent coming, Marty's dad. And I think he does a very powerful job of registering the horror without our having to see it. And we use a segue of his screaming voice over the church and the funeral, which, I tried very hard to kind of keep the minister preserved from anybody's suspicion. Keep him as compassionate as possible, because we were trying to show a portrait of truly an insane person, a true split personality. His good side was very, very good, but his bad side. Here's Uncle Red now starting to be affected by Marty. It's a healing. In one way of looking at this film, it's a healing story. But it is true that the dynamic between Marty and Uncle Red is healing of Uncle Red as well. He's getting his life together in the course of the film without calling too much attention to that fact. Here's an instance of him seeing that maybe he should not use his crutch at this moment. Maybe he should try to stay there emotionally for Marty.
Any word of comfort I can give you is just this, that the face of the beast always becomes known, and the time of the beast always passes.
And you kind of get the sense that Uncle Red is kind of getting a little better just by virtue of the fact that his sister is maybe willing to cut him a little slack here.
Thank you. Come on, Marty, you're going with me. Bob, Jane, see you at the house. All right.
And in this next scene, because I think subliminally it's because of the disability, Marty is, we're trying to show, has some sort of preternatural or some sort of understanding, intuitive connection with whoever the killer is. And I would suggest that an interesting way. Anyway, I told myself to kind of use as a template for the movie is that this is about disability. This is what the subtext of this film it was for me in any case, and so the boy Marty, who is disabled, has a sense of someone being disabled who would have done these things. So he gets the sense that he introduces the side of a werewolf, and which seems like a pretty logical conclusion to make, given how horrible the mutilations have been. But Uncle Red doesn't buy it.
You have got to get this idea out of your head. Psychotics are more active when the moon is full. And this guy's a psycho. When they catch him, you're gonna find out he's just as human as you and me. Okay. Come on. You don't know what groups you're
All right, here's our vigilante group.
Groups 1 through 4 in the woods north of the Sternfuller place. Right. Okay. 5 and 6 west of Carson Creek. Yeah. Now, if he comes out in the moonlight tonight for
And it's a debate, of course, about how civilized should we remain in the face of this kind of horror.
the only deputy you got is that fat shitbag beside you, and neither one of you has done anything about solving his
I don't think we offer any new insight into that debate.
You couldn't catch a cold.
The law has a name for what you people are planning. It's called private justice. And private justice is about a step and a half away from lynch mobs and hang ropes. Now, I may be no J. Edgar Hoover, but I am the law in Tarker's Mills. I want all you people to go home.
Don't let this guy scare you. And what's he done since this whole thing started but hang his face out? He ain't got so much as a fingerprint. Shut up, Andy. No, don't tell me to shut up.
Yes.
Shut up.
This is Brady's dad. And of course he's going to turn the tide, and everybody's going to go out with renewed passion to go find the killer. And it will be the Reverend who is outside the bar there, who will desperately be trying to stop everyone. And it was a nice touch in Stephen's script that it makes sense in both to both personalities of the Reverend, the werewolf and the Reverend. Of course, the Reverend, as a Reverend, does not want people going out acting vengefully and vindictively, and as a werewolf, of course, he doesn't want people going out there trying to kill him.
You come in here and talk to these men about private justice? You dare to do that? Why don't you go out to Harmony Hill, Sheriff Heller, and dig up what's left of my boy Brady and explain to him about private justice? Would you want to do that? As for me,
This is going to lead to a extended sequence in the woods with some comic relief, which I was looking for at every opportunity in this film because I thought, so much really had to be handled tongue-in-cheek to keep the audience. And I think it's how Stephen King intended it as well. I mean, there's a lot of humorous touches. Here, of course, is the Reverend, looking like he's trying to do the right thing. Jay Chataway had fun with this. A lot of different opportunities for different kind of score music, which I thought he did very effectively. This was a case of losing the light being a real advantage, since we really didn't have much time to get this in Magic Hour, and it all worked very effectively in one shot. So here we're just trying to show, you know, the dangerousness of a lot of characters going off literally half-cocked. I mean, if there's a point of view of the film, I guess it's that what the film refers to as private justice is not to be endorsed. The full moon comes up. Of course, the Brady killing had happened a few nights before when it wasn't full, but introduced the fog idea, which is going to become kind of the playing field for the Bill Smitrovich character to kind of finally be rendered impotent. I'm tickled by this sequence when the mayor gets his foot caught in the trap and old Virgil releases it again.
What is it? My foot! My foot, get it off me! I'm coming. Sure. 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 Okay. 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 Hey, over here!
Tough break. I hate when that happens. So now we're establishing the ground fog is getting a little higher. And here's our chief bad good guy leading his pack of unfortunates into not such a great place. Now, filming this was a challenge. It was scripted that, you know, the fog is, you know, chest or waist high. And we could not do that on location because to make the effect, I forget if we used dry ice or how we did it. This was quite a while ago. I'm recording this, I guess, 17 years after it was filmed. But we did recreate the room they move into, or the area they move into, on a soundstage. This tree was a cutting piece, a segue, where we cut through black as we move through. Now we're on the stage. And we're able to control the environment and control the level of the dry ice.
Came from over there. As far as I could tell, it came back of us. It ain't down there, Andy. We'll spread out in the skirmish line. That son of a bitch tries to come around us. We'll get him. Oh, shit.
It's a nice Stephen King touch. I mean, just how creepy to kind of be pursuing and then find yourself in a situation where you're helpless. And then you become the objects of the pursuit.
Where's it coming from? Over there? No, it's behind us. I told you couldn't.
Lawrence Tierney, who plays the Mr. I forget his name, the character's name, but he plays the bartender and he's got the bat, which is going to become an important prop. There's an interesting, after the killings you will see, but the original script, here's poor Julius LaFleur, the stunt coordinator, getting killed. The last part of this sequence, which we'll come to shortly, involved the Lawrence Tierney character kind of having a more prolonged fight with the werewolf, kind of bobbing up and down out of the fog. And I think we actually even had some special effects makeup made like that. Not the one we just saw with this poor fellow's face torn in half. Not that it didn't look terribly realistic, but here we go. So you'll see, that is actually the stunt coordinator. We had to improvise that on the set because it's very hard to stay down below that. You cannot breathe when you're down in that dry ice. And Lawrence Tierney was, you know, a hefty man, not a young man. And we realized when we were in the middle of filming that we couldn't do the scene as scripted. So this was just something that I improvised at the time, just have the stunt coordinator disappear and have the bat itself become a prop, which gets torn in half. Okay, now, the first funeral set this one up. This is of course, a dream sequence, which we are meant not to know at the beginning. Again, it's right psychologically, I think, for a character who's disintegrating, who's still trying to hold on to his human side. We've established, as I mentioned, that these funerals, this is the format of the funeral, the look of the funeral. It's slightly darker. The lighting is a little moodier. It's a nighttime funeral. The looks of the people's faces are meant to still be realistic at this point, even though somewhat sinister. And I thought Everett McGill did a wonderful job here of just, coming from complete panic and anxiety and fear. This is his dream, after all.
There is no comfort.
This is the first really disturbing, odd, anomalous kind of comment, and it becomes wildly grotesque. This was fun. Took all day to shoot. I believe it was only one day to shoot. With all the special effects makeup of everybody becoming werewolves. So now we asked all the actors to start acting like werewolves even before the makeup started getting applied. Here we go. And it's also meant, of course, as a misdirection from knowing that the Reverend is himself the werewolf. Armando had some fun with the lighting effects. And hopefully the audience still did not figure out that this was the werewolf. It doesn't seem terribly surprising to me that a night fireworks display would be canceled in this town at this kind of time, but it surprised this family. And, I know dramatically why it's there, of course, is to kind of show Marty's indomitable spirit. But I'm afraid the family does seem rather doltish to kind of not be commenting on any of the events of the town, which would certainly preoccupy me if I were there. And here we show people are leaving Tarker's Mills. It was nice shooting in North Carolina. Very film friendly. Here we're going to get the new silver Boolit unveiled. I love the scenes with Gary Busey and Corey. Because Gary is such a kid at heart. I mean, I must say, it was my first picture to direct. The cameraman spoke only Italian. There were a lot of challenges, and taking on Gary Busey was not the least of them. But it was so well worth it. It was funny working with Gary in scenes. I was working generally with Gary and two kids, but I found myself spending more time kind of addressing Gary's concerns and anxieties and desires for it to be good than the kids. He was kind of more a kid than Corey and Megan, which I found endearing, if sometimes infuriating. But I loved working with him. He had just great ideas. He ad-libbed a lot of lines. I'll try to comment on them as we get to it. He always gave things just a touch that made it seem real and unique and idiosyncratic and just real. So here, of course, becomes the kind of the symbol of Marty's spirit, that this vehicle that can fly. So even though he's wheelchair bound, he's in no other way bound.
Hell yes, it's for you. Damn, looks good.
Wow. It's beautiful.
Do you have a pilot's license?
When this was filmed in 84, released in 85, it wasn't such a big deal to have kids wear helmets. Ironically, a few years later, Gary Busey himself was riding a motorcycle and had made a point of not wanting to wear helmets and was terribly, terribly seriously injured, almost died. And I believe started wearing a helmet. But it concerns me watching this now to see this boy flying at such great speeds without any protection, but so be it. It's a great wheelchair / motorcycle that Jeff Jarvis designed. Corey did a lot of his own driving on this. That was a stunt double over the back of him, of course, the wheelie and all that. But, you'll see a wheelie when he turns around that is very clearly Corey. Dramatically, it was also important to establish the speed of this for the later pursuit when the Reverend is trailing him in a car. Here we see the wheelie, I think. Yeah. I think the welfare worker was back at the trailers at the time. No, that's not true. All right. I loved Corey, too. He was just... you could tell he just loved driving this thing. Uncle Red is pretending to faint.
This thing goes super, super fast.
I know it goes super fast. You better watch it. Because if your mother finds out just how fast...
Occasionally you hear Corey's Canadianisms in this southern town, so super, super fast. I caught him.
Listen to me. I built that for you because I love you. Right from my heart. And I want you to be careful on it. Because if you got hurt on it, it'd kill me. Let's get some barbecue, okay? Well, I tell you, after every pork tartare dinner I eat...
Most of this was ad-libbed. I mean, there was a lot in the previous scene, too. I wasn't paying close enough attention to the dialogue at that point, but Gary just adds so many lovely little touches.
I've got to go.
Okay.
I've had a wonderful time.
So have I. I wish it could always be like this.
Well, maybe it will if you keep inviting me down when you cook these pork dinners.
Okay.
Garbanzo, nice to meet you.
Garbanzo was certainly not a scripted name for Janie's friend.
Okay. Why don't you walk me around my car? Walk me around my car to see if I can stay out of trouble that long. Thank you very much.
So here you see the family kind of coming together, that some healing has been happening, at least within the family, if not in the community. Where Gary came up with that one, I don't know. Here's one of those moments where it's kind of hard to be dramatically credible. That given the state of things in Darker's Mills, that any adult would encourage this little boy to go out at night. But he does tell him stay close to the house. So. And it repeats an important theme, which is you're not going to let the bad guys beat the good guys from having a living life. That, of course, is going to be the weapon that enables Marty to get away finally from the werewolf.
Remember, stay near the house, okay?
As if that makes it all okay, but whatever. This next sequence probably the most dramatic example of really showing this kid being disabled. And it was so great that Corey could do it. We had a stuntman for that to climb down, but this is the real Corey. He's got a lot of upper body strength, which a kid in his situation would have, and he takes himself all the way down without any muscle movement in his lower body. And I think it goes far to really establish his credibility and sympathy for him. So, of course, being a regular kid, mischievous, no fear, he goes off to a nice spot for fireworks, middle of a bridge over a lake. Not the most intelligent decision, given what's going on, but... So we start with some objective POVs, not to tip that Mr. Werewolf is lingering. You know, this sequence, I was a new director, and this sequence presented a lot of challenges. I really got hung up with matching issues because you're dealing with all these fireworks, basically these effects, which you're creating on the day right there. It was prior to any CGI stuff. And, you know, a lot of it had to match which particular kind of firecrackers. There were a lot of duds, you know. So this actually took longer to shoot than we had planned. We had to come back at a different part of the year, actually, to finish it. You'll actually notice that in some, I think the POV of the creature coming towards Marty, the trees are all defoliated. This one, I'm not sure when we shot what, but there was a period of about 4 months between them. A lot of cheated geography to sell this sequence also. I mean, how a werewolf could walk all the way up the bridge. But it actually worked pretty effectively. But you can be the judge of that. So the long walk commences, and Marty has to try to light this rocket that was the last thing Uncle Red had given him. Nothing special for that effect. We did have one intermediate shot between the release of it and hitting the eye of it going along a wire. Probably only in for about 3 frames. That helped to sell it. And then it was just in the eye, and our actor just jumped back with it in. Okay, so now for the next kind of revelation about Marty, and that is that he trusts himself. And he pretty much sticks to his story. I like this scene with Uncle Red. Even though he has made some progress, you still see he's pretty much of a reprobate. You know, when he's not around Marty, it's his werewolf side. I say that jokingly, but, you know, it is I find when you approach a piece, you really need something to anchor it, something conceptually to anchor it. And that's what anchored this piece, is that we all have this dark side. We all have some sort of disability, and it's our courage in facing it that really determines the value of our life. And here's the turn with Janie. And we have the reprise of the narration, which I don't think has occurred except at the very beginning of the picture. Not the most elegant narration.
I gotta talk to you.
But I love the next montage. It's probably my favorite. I really love this sequence where Janie is helping Marty. And the challenge in shooting it was really to keep it mysterious. And, as soon as you see somebody, you know whether they've got this hole in their face or not. So how to make it dramatic was kind of a fun challenge. And I like how it's kept, from her point of view all the way through.
Marty had seen where the rocket had struck home, he said.
She also has great spunk and determination, which I love watching.
Hi, Mrs. Thayer. I'm collecting returnable bottles and cans for the MedQ drive. I was wondering if you had any.
We always try to keep that left eye the last thing that gets revealed.
Hello, Jane.
Who is it?
It's Jane Coslow.
Hello, Jane.
This is kind of fun where, she's able to invade the space of the town bully
That's okay.
because she's on a mission.
Is that you, Mr. Fairton? Got any bottles or cans?
No.
Bye, Mr. Clare.
Bye, Jane.
So in keeping it her point of view, we also try to keep it very much a child's point of view. So this next scene, it's kind of how grown-ups are perceived by kids.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry to disturb your lunch. I'm collecting bottles for the MedQ drive. I was just wondering if any of you had seen Mr. Robertson? Hi, Mr. Robertson. I was wondering if you had any. I guess not. Thanks.
And this was another example of Stephen King being very open to a suggestion. This was something that I had suggested in prep, that it would be nice to save the reveal of the Reverend for this moment, and it could be something that, Janie is totally oblivious to. She's already given up the search. This is a bit of a tip when he turns his head and you see, we cannot see his left eye, but it always struck me as kind of a fun way to put her in danger when she's least suspecting it.
Brothers sometimes do that. Take your cart on around to the garage, then bring me your tally sheet.
So now we know he's the bad guy. And Stephen King wrote very nice touches. Now that the threat is introduced, Janie winds up getting scared by what? By a mouse. And it's her reaction to the mouse that leads her, and then her again giving up fear. Oh, okay, silly me. That then temporarily relaxes the audience until her response to the fear is what then reveals for her the proof of the Reverend's werewolfness. So hopefully this diffuses some of the tension the audience has felt, that she's felt, silly me. And the bat that is revealed there is our famous prop that I've referred to 3 times, which is the bartender's baseball bat that got snapped in half by the werewolf who pummeled him to death with it, and now is sitting with some chew marks in it. We should have put some more in it. And maybe some blood, but anyway, that's life.
Having some trouble.
And here she is, cornered. I love watching her in this. I just find her just so wonderfully petrified.
Jane, you're trembling.
I don't feel well. I think maybe I got too much sun.
Well, would you like to come in the parlor and lie down for a bit?
No.
I'll have a cold drink. I have some soda.
I think I should get home and help my mom with dinner.
I'll give you a ride.
No.
Megan was such a trooper. You'll see she bumps into the car,
To your brother, Jane.
which I kind of asked her to just do, but she did it with such force that I think she was badly bruised, but never complained.
What'd you do then? I ran faster than I've ever run in my life.
So now brother and sister are bonded, which is another, hopefully, was a way kids could root for this film, you know, and identify against, you know, with the kids against the grown-ups. That's why, you know, frankly, I was very, very mixed at the beginning of this picture and in the prep of this picture. I had actually made a case for really minimizing the violence because I think it works quite well as a kind of kid's adventure. But with all of the kind of two-dimensional characters getting so gorily killed, it kind of made it an R. But the feeling was people, at that time anyway, associated Stephen King with an R movie. And I think, frankly, it was to the detriment of this. I think it really would have been a better picture if we could have just focused on the kids. I mean, the kid scenes are quite good, I think. But had we been able to minimize the gore and the blood, I think it would have been a superior picture. But hindsight and all that, although it wasn't hindsight. So the plan is to smoke out the Reverend. So now the kids are kind of taking matters into their own hands.
I mailed another letter from Marty the next day.
The voiceover, by the way, is by Tova Feldshuh, a wonderful actress who I had worked with in my former life as an assistant director, and she helped out, which I was very appreciative of.
Sometimes I think your common sense got paralyzed along with your legs.
And here's one of these great scenes, which now there's several scenes that'll be between Uncle Red and the two kids, and I just think these are just great. Because they're all kids.
Love notes to the local minister suggested that he gargle with broken glass or eat a rat poison omelet.
It came for me.
He's a big kid, knowing he's the adult, too, taking responsibility for that, which I love.
So you can hear what you sound like.
What about the baseball bat Jane saw in a shed?
What about it?
You know who used to have a baseball bat like that? Mr. Knopfler.
So?
It looked like Bigfoot had used it for a toothpick.
You want to know what I think?
No. I just called you out here to admire your pretty little face.
You better watch your mouth right now. You're on thin ice with me, son. I think you had a hallucination. I think it's probably a broomstick or something.
It was not. Do you want me to show it to you? Come on, I'm not afraid. I'll show it to you right now.
No. I'm a little too old to be playing the Hardy Boys Meet Reverend Werewolf.
Jan, forget it.
Jesus. Yeah, forget it. Werewolf.
Probably have gotten rid of it by
I
now.
don't know too many other actors who could have delivered that line that well.
Just forget
The
it.
Reverend Werewolf cracks me up.
You see your suspect yet, Marty?
Yes. I see him.
Are you trying to tell me that a man who took a rocket in the eye 3 nights ago is out here painting a thermometer? He'd either be in the hospital or he would be dead.
I didn't shoot him when he was a man. I shot him when he was...
What, a werewolf? Oh, Jesus. Jane, you don't believe this madness, do you?
I don't know exactly what I believe. But I know that what I saw was a baseball bat and not a broomstick. And I know there was something strange about the way the garage smelled that day. It smelled like an animal's den. And I believe in Marty. You used to believe in him too, Uncle Red.
So now Janie, of course, is fully on the same page with her brother. Now, this was the first sequence of the whole picture that we filmed, coming so much later in the telling, of course. And it was interesting, since this was my first job directing, Dino had a very interesting response when he looked at dailies. That shot of the kids, the legs running, I was told that when he was watching dailies and he saw that shot, he realized, he said, well, that I knew how to direct. Which told me more about Dino, actually, that he really knew the heart of the scene, which was all about. This was the one glimpse into Marty that he may feel a little badly for himself that he can't run. And it was, his emotional point of view, that's what he was looking at. That's what he was focusing on, watching the kids playing, was was the boys running. And it's interesting that just at this really one moment where he is vulnerable, where his guard is down in a sense, where his constructed self is no longer operating and we're seeing to his dark side, that's when he makes himself vulnerable to being preyed upon by the Reverend. It's a nice psychological point, really. That he is being threatened by his dark side, of kind of ruining his stance to life. But I'm not kidding myself that this movie carries that much depth. This was a very fun sequence to film. Again, filmed very early in the filmmaking process and the schedule. This is a case, too, of, Stephen King, being a New Englander, wrote for New England, and here we were in the South, so you'll see later in the sequence when Marty gets trapped in a covered bridge. I don't really know if those exist in the South. They certainly exist in New England. So there's kind of a New England bridge that our very, very able production designer, Giorgio Postigliani, designed. It's just a magnificent bridge. I was so sorry that it had to come down once we were finished filming. You'll see it shortly. And here is the Reverend, now totally insane. He's been driven to complete distraction by his dark side, by his refusal to integrate it, to own his shadow, as the Jungians out there would say, and of which I probably include myself. Okay, so we're coming to the bridge, trying to establish the car is out of control. And it looks like Marty's gonna get away. But we know there's this dangerous bridge. And here it is. I love this establishing shot of the bridge coming up in a couple of cuts. It's just so pretty. There it is. That was built by Giorgio Postigliani. So now Marty is up a creek without a paddle, and we've established that he's, earlier, that he sometimes lets his gas gauge, he sometimes ignores it, and he's ignored it here, and he's out of gas. And I love this dialogue that Stephen wrote for the Reverend. It's just so lunatic. But we see it's kind of logical. I mean, here's a guy who, still can't admit that he's not a servant of God. So he's working so overtime to justify it. But this brilliant last phrase when he says, you ignorant little shit, or meddling little shit, cracks me up.
I won't tell anyone.
You should have left me alone, Marty. I can't kill myself. Our religion teaches that suicide is the greatest sin a man or a woman can commit.
Trying to hang on to his righteousness, even when he's completely wretched.
By killing her, I took her physical life, but I saved her life eternal.
Which, of course, makes him most dangerous. The fact that he cannot own his wound, as we say in psychological circles, makes him so dangerous to everybody else.
You're gonna have a terrible accident, Marty. You're gonna fall in the river.
Mr. Zinnerman! Help me! Please! Help me! Mr. Zinnerman! Please!
you, Marty?
Corey did a great job with this. This unfortunately also had to be broken up a bit because this is common in filmmaking. You know, you have to sometimes save close-ups for, another day when you have time to get them, which is what we did in this case.
Without the foaming jaws and the hair and the teeth.
You talk to the sheriff?
Yes, after Marty's latest thrilling tale of wonder, but he's had no complaints of poison pen pals.
See? Told you. Shut up, Marty.
So here's the kind of amateur sleuthing. Uncle Red's gonna, well, you'll see.
Jane? What color is Lowe's car?
Blue. This blue.
All right, so now Uncle Red is not persuaded of the supernaturalness of these occurrences, but is ready to go to the authorities.
I know.
Do you believe any of this?
Now, Red's pants are not on fire. He is actually holding a cigar, which we'll see in a little while. Thank God we could work in a cut that established it.
That can be arranged.
There. You know, it's funny, the opening of the scene with the cigarette being lit, it's actually, fine as an opening. But it was meant to tie into the last part of the scene when he gets killed, which had him also lighting another cigarette. But Dino didn't feel that the scene was extended enough, and so asked for Stephen to do a rewrite, or actually, I think, told Stephen what he thought would work, and it was then incorporated, which was to put a second room in the garage. And it was also Dino's idea, which I think was a real good one, which is to have all this kind of religious statuary and everything back there. So we'll see that shortly. So if private justice isn't good, I guess official justice isn't much better. Or at least it can meet the same fate. We already know this is a scary place. It's where Janie had her confrontation with the Reverend. So the hope, of course, is that the association carries over and we're scared out of our minds. Nice scoring effect of kind of flies. And the sheriff is going to find the complimentary colors of the silver bullet on the Reverend's car, just as Red had seen the Reverend's blue paint on the silver bullet. In the original version, as soon as he stands up from this point, this was where he had been dispatched. This was where the new set and continuation of the scene came in. From here on is we had to come back and add this part. I think it was interesting here. I kind of had a challenge how to reveal the Reverend. Like, normally it would be like from behind or something like this, but it seemed kind of interesting to just have him be right in his path.
I think you'd better come along with me, Reverend.
You know, the werewolf effects, I want to give a credit to Jeff McCracken, who did these effects, and with not a great amount of money and not a great amount of prep time. Since, frankly, not many, a little too gory for my taste, but c'est la vie. It's what I shot. We did do versions, however, but this is what made it. Okay. Beautiful shot. Long lens and the against this incredible lake in North Carolina with these trees coming out of it. It's a beautiful country. Here's where the silver bullet is requested to be made. And Gary Busey just did such a good, all these actors did such a good job of kind of taking this. What I loved about Gary is, like, you know, he took this absurd idea. I mean, as a in character, he, you know, listened to this absurd idea, but still you got a sense of his character being just cool enough to kind of consider it, even while he was trying to be the adult here. And here's the film's attempt to try to account for why the werewolf shows up at pretty much any phase of the moon. And here where the explanation is, well, you know, as it gets more full, the guy's more wolfier. And here's where, and because of this, and this is again Marty's connection to this wounded person. I mean, we don't define him as wounded. We just say he's the werewolf. But I think this is what's being reinforced in the storytelling. Anyway, this is the attempt, is that that Marty has this intuitive connection because there's some way in which he shares a wound. It's just his response is the more healthy one. And it's a little, you know, so we just have to rely on good faith that he knows that it's not going to be until the full moon so that we can set up the night of the attack. This character is a hoot, I think. He really did a great job of just being this kind of Merlin kind of character.
My nephew has just discovered the Lone Ranger.
This was a nice ad-lib by Gary, I thought. He was just to come in and say, "Can you help me here?" And the guy says, "You want a silver bullet?" Gary came up with the Lone Ranger reference.
You want a silver bullet, huh?
No, this is, I love how comical the takes are of Gary.
He was, Uncle Red said, an old world craftsman.
This was fun. We actually got to make several silver bullets. It was just kind of cool.
Melted them down and molded them into a silver bullet. Marty had read all the legends about werewolves. And though they differed on several minor points, they all agreed on one.
You know, just thinking about the narrator, why it was kind of a nice touch having her be an adult, is that this was obviously a formative, and not just, I mean, you know, the crude reason it's formative and significant is all these people died. But in terms of psychological terms, it was a, you know, key point of, you know, character getting defined. And I think that's kind of subliminally suggested by having the narrator be an adult.
Ought to be pretty accurate.
No. Well, shoot, it's just a gag. I mean, what the heck you gonna shoot a 44 bullet at anyway? Made out of silver.
How about a werewolf?
Gary's gulp is great here.
The night of the next full moon came on Halloween, and a happy coincidence left us in the sole care of Uncle Red.
Another little moment which, shall we say, begs credibility. But Had to get him alone in the house. Why the parents would be going away at this time, I have no idea. But Uncle Red bought him a vacation, pretended it was a trip he won.
Okay, now go and have fun.
Bye. Have fun, Bob. You too, Red. Don't let those kids run you ragged.
You'd never know that Tucker Hill Mills was being ravaged. But you know what's kind of fun about it is, like, you know, I think the reason small kids respond to fairy tales is, you know, all the gruesome, you know, things that come out are just accepted as kind of part of life, and you can forget about them when you go about your business. And I think that's a little bit how this is intended to work.
Me and Nan, we're just like you.
Here we get this nice tie-in that it's generational tie-in.
The bitch of it is we still are.
Did you really win a trip to New York from Publishers Clearinghouse?
No. But the moon is full. And your parents are gone. And I did win a subscription to Popular Mechanics.
So now it's the witching hour. You know, this was made in '85, set in '76. I don't know if anybody remembers that television used to sign off with the Star Spangled Banner and then go to noise, but that's how it was. So this is kind of an historical document. God, now I think there's 24-hour programming on 157 channels. So they're asleep and vulnerable.
Gonna burn yourself up sometime doing that, Uncle Red.
Probably will.
If that would have gone off, that would have been the end of our silver bullet.
This is too much.
I like the way this scene is constructed by Steve, and how, you know, there's so many, you know, the heightening of tension, and then, you know,
The moon's not down yet.
characters saying, what are we doing? This isn't real. It was nicely nuanced.
Tonight with a stupid gun in my lap because I promised I'd do that. But you're going to bed.
Here's one of the best views we get of the monster for just a few frames, with when Janie looks over and sees him. I thought that was one of the more effective shots of the monster. You see too much of him, and he really isn't very scary.
You see.
I was looking at you.
And we're getting near one of my favorite lines in the picture,
No look, that's all.
when Uncle Red comes back from the window. This was a challenge of how to, you know, get the silver bullet out of the gun. So I'm not sure. It's been a while back, but I don't believe it was scripted how it got out of the gun. So my feeling was that in this line I was alluding to as my favorite line,
Beginning to come over.
when he says, "I'm beginning to feel like a horse's ass," it felt that would be the perfect time, because he's saying, this is why I'm a horse's ass. I believed you guys to make this stupid bullet, which helped dramatically now. So we have it out of his hand. And I think Stephen King told me one of his favorite moments is when he tries to shoot the werewolf, holding the bullet in his left hand next to the gun in his right hand, and hoping somehow he could fire it.
Don't panic.
He's here.
Marty, it could be just a few.
Now, just a little filmmaking note here. We had to kind of change the perspective to best feature the werewolf coming in behind Uncle Red. And when we see a noise, you see we did dollied near the noise to pull Red's look around, which then set up the next shot, where there's wall to his left, so that the monster could come in and you're not feeling manipulated. Just cut into that for no reason. We've been prepared for that. You know, this was a fascinating experience for me. It was an introduction to so many aspects of filmmaking for me, but to see the manipulation, the ability to manipulate time and space editorially, if you really examine the elements of this scene, the things that have to happen, and the time it takes, there's no way this kid isn't devoured by the werewolf, and before he's got his hand halfway down the grate. But by cutting, you totally buy it. Another example of The Longest Walk. So when we wanted to show the transformation back to Reverendhood, we had all these isolated pieces that we could show. One real nice one was this hair being sucked back into the skin. I think you'll see that momentarily. Let's see. There. But the other thing we did is we did an old school technique, which is dissolves for the ending. Yeah, from here. This is now just a series of picture dissolves. So we just locked down the camera and positioned Everett and sent him back for makeup until it was less and less. And I think the dissolves worked pretty well. Here's the alien oblique shot, or the wait until dark shot, for those of you who know that film. You think the guy's dead, but he pops up. And here's the last shot of the picture, which is nice because it shows you really the three people about whom the picture is dealing and what their relationship is. And also it's kind of a emblematic Marty gesture to kind of not be into self-pity, but to be able to go to humor. He's really the hero.
I love you, Jimmy. I love you too.
So here we kind of get, thematically, it's sappy, but you understand now that this is about from her side of the story, is that she was able to work through her resentments to love.
Good night.
And that's the end.